Howdy folks, Timber Drifter here. Getting ready to pack a clay with some capstan. I'm in my fire tower. Not much happening today. Yesterday was a pretty calm day too. Half of the flakes in this tin were stuck together, or perhaps fused is a better word. Couldn't separate out single flakes, so I just tore up several pieces. The other stack of flakes was fine, but you can see there's several layers there. That's how they were fused. But all smoke's the same. Anyway, yeah, smoking an old clay pipe today. This one, I know it's quite old, but I don't know exactly what period it's from. It's got that cutty shape, or rather, cutties have a clay pipe shape. It's a pretty small pipe. You can see the tip of my finger compared to the inside of the bowl there. And I've smoked clays for years. I started out when I was 15 years old doing reenactments. Some people call them rendezvous. It's groups of people that get together, or groups of people get together that are interested in the lifestyle and history and accoutrements of a period between 1740 and 1840, roughly, on the American frontier. And there's people that, they go for what they call period correct, which is anything, clothing, any gear, knives, guns, axes, tents, whatever, horse tack, any of that stuff that is proven to have existed in whatever period in that 100-year window they're trying to recreate. So anyway, I've been smoking clay pipes since I was right about the end of high school. I'd picked up a few at rendezvous, but I didn't really smoke them until later on. But anyway, this one could be quite old. I'm not sure. I've been smoking it for years. I've actually burnt it out in a fire one time because the airway is quite small, and it's very difficult to get a pipe cleaner through there. So once you've smoked it 20-30 times, it's damn near plugged up. So just like the old timers used to do, I just dropped it in a fire and let it burn out. But anyway, smoke's good now. And it's got a T and a D on there. So I figure that's for Timber Drifter, which is who I am. Now my preferred way to light these pipes is how they used to do it, which was either off of a candle or more commonly taking an ember out of a fire and dropping it right on the top of the tobacco. And of course you want to use an ember that's nearly completely combusted, otherwise you'll get the flavor of the wood. But it's a nice way to do it, and back in the old days they had specific tools just for that. They also used to and they used to start most of their fires with flint and steel, and if you aren't familiar with that method and you're interested, just search flint and steel on YouTube. You'll find hundreds of videos, if not more, people demonstrating and using it. But the main idea was there was a piece of steel and they'd strike a piece of flint, which created a spark, and they'd use that to start a fire. And of course, fire steels were used for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they developed into a high art. But some of these fire steels, that's what these are. That's the striking surface that you'd strike the flint or strike the flint against the steel. Some of them had pinchers for picking up embers. See, that one's got a flat spring and a hinge back here. This one's a little different design. This is the striking surface, and this piece of flat steel is peened to the end of this, and then it mates up with the bottom of this sort of duck-shaped mouth, so if you push down here, the mouth would open up, and you'd be able to grab an ember and drop it in your pipe or whatever. This is an old pipe tool. These are actually all reproductions from a guy named Charles Miller. But anyway, you can see it's a hand-forged pipe tool. There's the tamper bit there. There's a pick, and they both fold out, and then there's a steel striker surface. Pretty neat. I think I'm going to try making one of those. This is Muzzleloader Magazine. I don't read it very often, but bought a copy for reading while in the fire tower. Of course, there's a painting of some Native Americans, and this fellow has a clay pipe through his ear, which I suppose is something that could be done with those folks that have the stretched out earlobes. Might be useful. Anyway, just enjoying reading this magazine. I thought I'd smoke a clay pipe. There was a lot of pipe smoking going on back then. That was the primary way to smoke tobacco. Cigars were around, but they weren't all that common. So this piece right here, I don't believe that's a sprue for filling the clay mold because it's got the seam in it. Just like the rest of the pipe, these were made in two-part molds. This had a purpose, and I believe the purpose, from doing it myself and witnessing others and looking at old furniture, I believe the purpose of that was to keep your pipe upright. What you do is take the point of your knife and dig a little divot in a table or a chair or a stump, whatever you're going to set your pipe on, and set this down into the divot and it would hold it up. I've seen quite a few old Windsor chairs that have one or two of those little spots right on the handpiece. You might say it was the original sitter. Reading this magazine makes me think about how I got into doing the reenactment stuff, which I haven't done for years. I grew up watching that movie Jeremiah Johnson on TV. Whenever it would come on, I'd watch it. Of course, that had quite a influence on the wanderlust of a young boy, the dream of running off to the mountains with a rifle and living that way. So I played at that dream often enough. And also the movie Last of the Mohicans, which also came out when I was fairly young. And that had quite an influence on me. And I've read a lot of history from from about the early 1700s all the way up into the early 1900s. Pretty much the whole period interests me. I no longer reenact, but I still kind of stick with the spirit of I guess that time period as far as items that I use. I don't like plastic junk. I was just daydreaming about taking off out into the woods. Before I started making this video, I went for a hike this morning before I came up in the tower, and just have that urge to grab a few items and head out into the woods for a few days, but I don't have time right now. Seems like the gear that I carry is all stuff that either I can repair or reproduce, except for firearms, of course. And what I was thinking about right now, I'd love to just grab my single shot 12 gauge and a handful of shells and small hatchet or tomahawk and a couple folding knife and a belt knife, a bag with a small pot for boiling water, making tea, and a little frying pan, bag of cornmeal, a little bit of cured bacon, small fishing kit, blanket roll, just one wool blanket, a poncho, and a little spark rod, and just hit the woods. Just be gone for a few days. Love to do that right now. It'll have to wait. Yeah, I've been smoking clays for years, and I've got quite a few of them. I've got one that I know is an original from the early 1800s. It's not this kind of clay though. It's actually glazed. It's kind that the stem is meant to fit into. They provide a different kind of smoke than briar or meerschaum or corncob. It's a drier smoke.
Eagle River Station, Rhinelander.
And depending on how you smoke it, it could get hot pretty quick, and the bowl certainly can get hot. One way to train yourself to smoke clays is to hold on to the bowl. Smoke it all the way down, hanging onto the bowl. That's a good way to train yourself, because it'll get hot, and if you smoke it right, it won't get hot enough to burn you. So if you can hang onto that bowl and smoke it all the way down to the bottom, you're good. And of course, you'll have a much more enjoyable experience. Yeah.
Is it Bellman Lane with a B, like Bellman? Bellman Lane.
Kind of dreaming about heading off that way. There's not much out there. A couple of roads, a few little chunks of private property. Otherwise, there's 2 small towns that way. There's 3 that way. And there's 1 that way. So to the northeast is really the only area I could head to and just walk straight for a ways and only have to cross a few roads. And of course that's illegal anyway, because it's state forest. You're supposed to camp in campgrounds, which is why I spend most of my time in the national forest when I do that kind of thing. Anyway, that's enough rambling on for me. Take care.